the King of England, Henry V, a gift of tennis balls. And because everyone was absolutely bloody mental back then, the tennis-loving Henry took this rather thoughtful present as a grave insult. As payback for the unforgivable slight, he invaded France. Okay, so I've simplified that just a tad. Tensions between France and England had been on the rise for some time, but even so, a simple gift of tennis balls ultimately played a key role in kicking off what we now know as the Agincourt campaign, one of the most significant conflicts in European history. Well, maybe. The story of the gifted tennis balls has been told for centuries. It even crops up in Shakespeare's Henry V. But some modern historians suspect it might never have actually happened. Historical sources are a little shaky on the subject, and it's perfectly possible the story is apocryphal. Either way, Henry V's unwelcomed balls isn't the only time this not-so-humble sport of tennis has shaped the history of our species. For example, the Agincourt campaign was a part of the 100 Years' War, a colossal conflict that might never have even happened in the first place if not for tennis. You see, the first known tennis player in all of history was some bloke called Louis. Full name, Louis X, King of France. After a particularly feisty tennis match on the 5th of June, 1316, old Louis found himself in urgent need of a drink. This being precisely 649 years before the invention of Gatorade, he quenched his mighty thirst with an astonishing volume of chilled wine. And then he died. King Louis was just 26 at the time, and his death was the beginning of the end of the venerable Capetian dynasty that had reigned over France for almost 350 years. So long that this period of French rule is known as the Capetian miracle. The ensuing succession crisis threw the country into chaos, and ultimately led to the initiation of the 100 Years' War. In other words, were it not for tennis, the entire course of European history might have been completely different. Purity Debt Solutions is an innovative financial services company aiming to provide financial peace of mind. They have customized options for anyone struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. They care about getting you out of debt. Bad and fair credit is accepted. You can save thousands in interest and fees and pay off your debt in a fraction of the time. You know, getting into debt is really easy. I remember when I was younger, my car broke down and I didn't have the funds to pay for a mechanic at the time until my next paycheck in 3 weeks' time. The anxiety and the stress of a situation like that can be soul-crushing, but you don't have to go it alone. There is a way out and help is available, thanks to PDS Debt. They're a top-rated company on Google and have an A+ rating on the BBB. PDS Debt is offering a free debt analysis. It only takes 30 seconds, so head over to pdsdebt.com/42 to get your free debt assessment today. And thanks to PDS Debt for sponsoring this video. Fast forward to today, and tennis has grown to become the 4th most popular sport in the world, followed by an estimated 1 billion fans around the globe. The tennis industry is worth about $1 billion a year worldwide, and its leading players, though not quite kings, are international superstars, earning tens of millions of dollars. But at the heart of this wildly popular game lies a surprising mystery, an enigma that's been hiding in plain sight for decades, no, centuries. And it's all to do with the way the game is scored. As you may or may not have noticed, the scoring system in tennis is absolutely f***ing mental. Tennis matches are split into several sets, usually 3, but in the biggest tournaments it's 5. And each set is divided into a minimum of 6 games. So far, so reasonable. But here's where things get a bit odd. At the start of the game, players have 0 points. But we don't call it 0, we call it love. So the opening score in any given game is love all, which sounds kind of romantic, but is actually just pure madness. The common explanation for the use of the word love in tennis is that it's an anglicised version of the French word l'œuf, meaning egg, a reference to the fact that a 0 looks a bit like an egg. Other sports make the same association. A batsman losing his wicket for no runs in cricket is said to have got out for a duck, short for a duck's egg. But the truth is, it's just a theory, one that plenty of tennis historians dispute. The first player to win a point in any given game doesn't add a 1 to his score, but 15. If he wins another point, his score will then jump to 30, which seems to suggest we're counting in 15s now. A bit random, but I guess it works. Except we aren't counting in 15s, because if that same player wins another point, his score will jump not to 45, but 40. Even more weirdness ensues if the score gets to 40 all, known as deuce. But let's stick to the basics for the purpose of this video. You may have played or followed tennis for years without ever even thinking about how insane the scoring system is. But it really does make no sense whatsoever. And here's the really mysterious part. If you were to ask one of tennis's billion fans to explain exactly why we scored their beloved game in this unusual way, I can guarantee that they won't know the answer. And the reason I can guarantee that is that nobody knows. Not a single person alive today knows why we score tennis the way we do. Luckily, there are a couple of intriguing theories, but in order to explain what they are, we're going to have to go back in time all the way to the Big Bang. Oh, no, sorry, wrong video. We're going to have to go back in time all the way to the invention of tennis. The popular game we know and zero today evolved from an earlier sport called real tennis, sometimes referred to as the sport of kings, due to its popularity with European royalty. I say popularity, but I must admit I have no idea why they were so into it. Tennis was almost as dangerous to your average medieval monarch as a cup of strange-tasting tea made by a relative with a strong claim to the throne. I've already mentioned that Louis X met his maker thanks to tennis, but he certainly wasn't the only one. In 1437, King James I of Scotland was relaxing in his chambers at Blackfriars Priory when a servant warned him that a group of men were on their way to murder him. Finding the windows locked, the king managed to pry up a floorboard and dropped down to the sewer below. But just when it looked as though he'd made his escape, he discovered that the exit to the sewer had been blocked with large rocks. With nowhere to run, the assassins soon caught up with him, and he was brutally stabbed to death. We have no way of knowing what was going through the king's mind as he passed from this plane into a puddle of poo, but I'm willing to bet he was cursing the day he ever took up tennis. You see, the sewer hadn't been blocked by the assassins, but by the king himself, or at least on his orders. It happened to exit to the Priory's tennis court, where the king had been spending most of his time over the previous few days. Fed up with losing so many balls down the drain, he ordered that it be blocked off. Well, it was a decision that quite literally killed him. Several other royals have lost their lives to tennis, including King Charles VIII of France. He fell into a coma and died after hitting his head whilst rushing to a tennis match at the Château d'Amboise. And Frederick, Prince of Wales, who expired from a burst lung abscess after taking a tennis ball to the chest. Anne Boleyn was watching a game of reel when she was arrested, and Henry VIII was playing whilst she was executed. Despite the frankly alarming death rate, European royalty continued to play real tennis for centuries, and a few do even to this day. As a sport, it's quite different from modern tennis. For one thing, it's played in an enclosed asymmetrical court with sloped roofs known as penthouses along 3 of the 4 sides. The rackets are curved, and the balls, which are solid inside their hand-stitched linings, are more like cricket balls than regular tennis balls. In modern tennis, also called lawn tennis despite the fact it's rarely played on lawns these days, there are 3 main types of serve: the flat serve, the slice serve, and the kick serve. In real tennis, there are at least 13, including the underarm twist, the caterpillar, the boomerang, and the African hunting dog. But whilst there are a great many differences between the 2 sports, they have one important thing in common: that strange scoring system. And that brings me to our first theory about just where the hell it came from. Scholars of the game have suggested that in the early days of tennis, clock faces may have been used as a convenient way to track the scores. Whenever a player won a point, the minute hand would advance a quarter turn around the clock face. 15, 30, 40, wait a minute. Okay, so there's a pretty obvious flaw with that theory. If clock faces were used to score tennis games, the final point increment would be 45, not 40. But it turns out it actually was. Multiple sources show that tennis was once scored 15, 30, 45. But at some point, 45 became 40. Nobody knows exactly when they changed it or even why, but the most common explanation is that 40 is simply quicker to say than 45. So when clock faces were no longer used to track the scores, it was changed to save time. Okay, so that's all pretty convincing then, right? Well, not necessarily. At first, a clock face theory seems a perfect fit, and if you've ever looked into the whole tennis scoring mystery for yourself, it's very likely the answer that you found. But there's a bit of a problem. You see, the first written reference to tennis's peculiar scoring system can be found in a ballad written by the Duke of Orleans in 1435. But here's the thing. In 1435, minute hands on clocks hadn't actually been invented yet. They didn't appear until the late 16th century, by which point tennis's strange scoring system had been established for at least 140 years. And if minute hands didn't exist yet, they could hardly be used to keep scores in tennis matches, could they? So if not clocks, then what? As we've already seen, modern tennis evolved from real tennis, but real tennis isn't actually the beginning of the story. In truth, we don't know exactly when or where tennis's earliest ancestor can be found. Some historians even believe a kind of proto-tennis was played in ancient Egypt. But more easily traceable roots for the modern sport can be found in medieval France with a game called jeu de paume, meaning palm game in English. These days, jeu de paume and real tennis are essentially the same game, but paume is much older, and during its storied history, the rules have changed considerably. First played by monks in southern France in the 11th and 12th centuries, the earliest forms of paume were played with bare hands instead of rackets, hence the name. In the first half of the 15th century, bare hands became stiff gloves, and by the turn of the 16th century, those gloves had been traded for rackets. Now in its final form, jeu de paume became the most popular pastime in all of France, with over 250 courts in Paris alone. Remarkably, that's actually more than there are modern tennis courts in the city today, despite the fact that Paris's population has increased tenfold in that time. Considering its incredible popularity, it's fitting that one of the most important moments in French history took place on a pong court near the Palace of Versailles. That was where, on the 20th of June, 1789, 500 French commoners swore an oath never to give up until France had written a constitution. Today, we know that meeting as the Tennis Court Oath, the founding moment of French democracy, and one of the most important events in the initiation of the French Revolution. Anyway, according to some sources, early versions of paume proceeded a little differently to the modern game, with players advancing towards the net each time they won a point. Since paume courts are around 90 feet long, 45 feet a side, those advances were made in increments of 15 feet. 15 after winning the first point, 30 after winning the second, and 45 after the third, taking the player right up to the net, where another point would win them the game. Again, it's a nice idea, and this one could certainly be true, but just like the clock theory, there are some reasons to doubt it. Such a scoring system would only really have made sense if the earliest paume courts were standard sizes. Since the game is thought to have evolved in monastery cloisters, which would have been different from place to place, that seems quite unlikely. There are other theories. We know that base 60, also known as sexagesimal, has been an important numeral system for much of human history, including in medieval Europe. It may simply have been the case that counting in this way was a lot less odd to your average 12th century French monk than it would be to you or me. Or perhaps the scoring system is related to the denominations in some old currency or other. The truth is, we will likely never know for sure. We score tennis the way we do because, well, that's just the way we've always done it. And despite the fact it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, we'll probably still be doing it that way when the sun consumes the Earth 5 billion years from now. I don't know about you, but I find that rather comforting. Thanks for watching. Just a quick word to say that I couldn't make these videos without the support of my Patreon members. Consider joining the exclusive 42 Discord community by supporting me on Patreon. It's a great place to discuss my videos with like-minded individuals and myself. The link's in the description, but if you don't want to, or you can't join my Patreon, then please don't worry. A simple like or comment to say thanks would also put a huge smile on my face. Thank you.